My nature as a kid was very, not spiritual, but just like kind and loving, and I wasn't aware what I was doing, it was just who I was. But as I became more of the suffering personality that I developed, and you can get lost in the victim role and you feel scared to do anything with who you are, but it exposes the lack of spirituality that even existed before that. So maybe we were kind of spiritual, but it still exposes that there's room for more, and it pushes you to face that. So by being consumed by the pain, it urges the soul to look deeper, to find itself. So this is where I've said to many people that I've met recently, and pretty much everyone I express, that the pain that we're experiencing is the universe using our bodies to wake our souls up.
The Vidal Speaks podcast.
Episode 122, Daniel James Duncan and BillyMaree, from Hellville to Wellvile on fruit. Welcome to Vidal Speaks. My name is Deborah Vidal, former 11-year LPGA golf pro turned classical homeopath, certified plant-based nutritionist, and wellness coach. Each week here on Vidal Speaks, we bring you knowledge, inspiration, or natural remedies to help you take charge of your health and feel your best. I believe health is freedom and knowledge is power, so tuning in each week will give you the power to take steps towards freeing yourself from the chains that hold you back from having the energy to do all you want in life. No matter where you are in your journey of wellness, Vidal Speaks can help. I promise. Hi, everyone. How are you guys? Wow, it's a new year already, so happy new year to all. Check out my new year video that I made for you guys. It's short, only about 40 seconds or so, but I love it so much. And it is the true message of this new year, so be sure to check it out on my YouTube channel. I'm so excited to get into this year because Lloyd and I are going to begin a 30-day juice cleanse this week. I know, you guys are saying, what? That's so extreme. Yes, but come on, you guys. You know by now I'm not a person to go into anything lightly, right? I'm going to be documenting and updating via video, so be sure to follow our journey via my YouTube channel. We're committing to this 30-day juice cleanse or juice fast, or otherwise known as a juice feast, but we would really like to do it for 90, so we're going to take it month by month. It's a bit scary to think about doing this, but at the same time, I look so forward to having this experience. I believe it's the next step for us to dig deeper into our detox, and for sure, Lloyd needs this to push him up another level of healing. Juice fasting is the ultimate tool to dig deep and heal, and the best thing about it is that you can continue your normal life working, at least in comparison to water fasting where you become weak and you have to rest. There's a place for both, but John Rose calls juice fasting juice feasting, and that's because you're literally consuming about 20 pounds of fresh veggies and fruits, and your body is feasting on all those nutrients, which gives you a complete rest from any digestion. And guess what? When you don't digest, it speeds up your healing. Digestion takes about 80% of our body's energy. So without that energy going into our digestive process, it can literally go into our healing. And when you flood the cells with so much alkaline nutrition, you can't help but detox, rebuild, and heal from that stagnant, stuck place that we're all in. Try a 10-day juice feast, you guys. If you don't want to commit to 30, you can do 10. It'll be the experience of your lifetime, I promise. If you want to learn more, then stay tuned on my YouTube channel, and you can always Google John Rose and watch his YouTube videos because he talks about juice feasting a lot. Okay, so today my guest is Daniel James Duncan, and he has a great story to tell. I'm so happy to have him, and he's a happy story too because he went from being bedridden and in pain to a fully vibrant, grateful, aware soul that now can live his life. Daniel healed on the fruit diet, and he has done juice feasting and water fasting and, of course, much emotional work. all of these factors play a role in healing. And since the emotional part is often ignored or misunderstood, and as a homeopath, I was most interested in focusing on this aspect of his journey. I think this is the part that many have no clue how to begin. So I hope sharing his story with you guys can help all of us, no matter where we are in our life of healing, because we all have to learn to let go of so much and to see the world through a more spiritual, aware, and conscious point of view. The cool thing is, or at least in my opinion, I believe that eating a high fruit diet puts you on this road of being more spiritual or aware, because eating such high vibrational foods changes the biophoton levels in your cells. And once you're vibrating at such a high level, Daniel has been on this road now for almost a couple years, and you can hear in his story how it started with a fruit diet and taking the herbs, but how that led him to healing emotionally, which was the final release of his pain syndrome. I think hearing his story can help all of us realize how important each aspect of his journey is in our own lives. If we don't eat a high vibrational diet, then how can we feel good and be our best selves? If we don't have energy, how can we do anything to help others? If we're in pain or sick, how can we be happy and free? And finally, if we're so focused on the mundane cycle of our own sickness, how can we be filled with gratitude? Yep, the answer is we can't. Health is truly freedom, and you guys hear me say that all the time, but it's so true, because to not feel well or have the energy, it's really a trap, and being in that trap only leads to anger and frustration and a life that will be only focused on being stuck there. So Daniel and his girlfriend, BillyMaree Duffy, joined me today to speak about his journey from Hellville to Wellville. And what a gift to be as young as they are, only in their 20s, and to have all this knowledge already. It's so great to see young people have the truth, because they have their whole life now to change the world by putting the truth out into the world. They are the generation that we need to get it, that need the truth, because our generation has caused so much destruction, and it will take all of them to repair and rebuild the human race and our planet. At least it's the first step, right? So you guys, I'm really excited for you to meet Daniel and BillyMaree. I think you're going to love how honest and true our conversation is, and how amazing the healing journey really is, and just how deep that journey goes once we decide to get to Wellville. I'm super proud of Daniel and BillyMaree for all they're doing to get the truth out about fruit, mindfulness, and learning how to connect to be the true you. So let's not waste any more time and go talk to them, you guys. But you know by now that before we do that, I need to tell you a little bit about Daniel and BillyMaree. Daniel says that in order to discover this blessed lifestyle of a raw high fruit diet, I had to go through a bit of suffering arising from ignorance, something I'm so grateful for experiencing, to now where I have discovered the truth and appreciate life in such a profound way, knowing I can consciously create my well-being. Currently, I'm 23, happier and healthier than ever, but at 19, I wasn't well. I had underlying issues that caused skin problems, fatigue, and depression, and I was given medication called Accutane to treat this, and in less than 1 year, this drug took my body from me. From physically fit and capable, I was practically bedridden, approaching kidney failure. Doctors said that my symptoms were consistent with fibromyalgia, typically only seen in the elderly. This drug, Accutane, fast-tracked the expression of a genetic weakness, exactly what my mother has had for over a decade. Fortunately, becoming more health conscious before all this, I was already chasing trails of information, being guided into what was ahead. When my condition became chronic, I spent most of my waking hours seeking answers, eventually finding John Rose, who inspired me to do a juice feast. I managed to do 100 days, achieving what would have taken 6 months to a year to do if I'd just been simply eating fruits. This provided great relief, but did not heal me. During the fast, I discovered Robert Morse. This is where everything changed rapidly. Having already given up on Western medicine, realizing that their drug had caused my condition, I had no confidence in them, so I became my own doctor. Dr. Morse's teachings allowed me to execute this with certainty. After a year of studying and using his herbs to assist my organs, glands back to proper function, my body operated more efficiently than ever. The cleaner we are, the more sensitive and in tune we become with ourselves. Intuitively, I knew I had to do a water fast, so I did. After 16 days, I had exhausted all of my reserves. Cleansing on fruit first for some time allowed me to safely fast on water. After delicately rebuilding on fruit, my body had healed. Since then, I've been very active, traveling, enjoying health, and spreading this message. Fruit gave me back my life. I now devote myself to this powerful message of fruit and fasting. And BillyMaree Duffy is an Australian citizen that is a talented singer-songwriter. She has been Daniel's girlfriend before he was stricken with his illness, known in the medical world as fibromyalgia. She too took the drug Accutane. She also had her share of symptoms such as her hair falling out and an overall feeling of being poisoned. She got off the drug, but then had to be the support system and caretaker of Daniel as his health plummeted and he became almost bedridden. It is of great value to hear both of their stories because it is one journey to be the person in pain and yet another to be the person who is the partner who has to watch the person they love be in pain and then do everything they can to help them when often nothing helps or works. So her story can be shared with many of us out there in the same situation. All right, are you guys ready? Well, let's go meet Daniel and BillyMaree. I'm here with Daniel and BillyMaree. Thanks you guys for joining me today. And Daniel, you have
Thank you for having us here.
Oh yeah, my Australian mates.
Duo.
Daniel and I met in Florida at Dr. Morse's seminar, so I was telling the story, I think, on my YouTube channel, and your little story that I interviewed you there. So I think my podcast listeners want to learn a lot more about your story because there are so many people in the world that have either fibromyalgia or some unknown pain syndromes. And BillyMaree, you've been his partner, so you've been by the side of someone who's had a long healing journey. So
Seen the proof in the pudding.
The pain
She's
and
had a bit
the
of a taste as well, because when you're around people that are succeeding and growing, you kind of get that.
You want to partake in the lifestyle as well.
Yeah.
So it's been very encouraging to see him do what he does.
And what's cool is that when you partake in the lifestyle yourself, then you can prevent yourself from a lot of problems that you may have gotten.
Exactly. And it makes me a lot more passionate in helping him because I see how much it's helping.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And
it's
she
really
wasn't
good.
far from where I was with my body a couple of years, and because she was on the same medication that ultimately led me down the path I'm on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, because let's start from the beginning. So let us, first I want you to tell your story, what happened, how you got into that situation. You know, I know you told it briefly, but let's start from the beginning and tell us what happened.
Okay, well, I think it's important for me to prelude with how I was pretty healthy and a happy environment and just a good person in general. It wasn't like I had anything wrong when I was younger. Very active as a kid into my early teens. But around 13, 14, which is kind of as you're starting to really grow, this is probably the most important time for you to be active and in nature and connecting. This is when I started to... my uncle and friends were playing video games. It's when I started to like detach, and those were like the early onset of me like stepping out of the place where we're meant to be to grow healthily within ourselves and with nature and stuff like that. So at that age, when I stopped going outside and moving my body, which ultimately stagnates the lymph system, which is what we've all learned. After 3 or 4 years of that, when I was about 16, 17, I developed gastrointestinal issues, digestive problems, a lot of adrenal things, stress, anxiety, but I would wake up around 8 to 9 in the morning every morning. The year I finished, the first year out of school, and it was barely 3 weeks, and I'd literally wake up every morning with terrible pain in my colon, and just like at the time I thought it was just stomach pain. We're not really taught much about what areas of what, but it started with, so fibromyalgia wasn't like the first hit of bad health I've ever had. The gastrointestinal indigestion, I was in fetal position for an hour or more every morning from 17 to 18, and it kind of tapered out as I sought help through the medical system, but eventually it was like naturopathic that got me out. But
So when you were in the medical world looking for help when you were having those intestinal pains, did they just tell you, like, what did they do, and what did they tell you you had?
Tested for celiacs. They did all kinds of things. They put the scope up me and down my throat, and they just pretty much came back and said, yeah, it looks fine. And
That's always like the worst news possible.
Honestly, so
It's fine, but I feel like shit.
Yeah, that's always, isn't that the worst day?
So I thought, part of me thought, like, being young as well, just not understanding, I thought I was dying, and that kind of helped me to overcome certain fears and maybe like detach a little, and that raised spiritually who I was, and that was all preparation for what was ultimately to come. But that was like an early onset, and it backs up the idea. The truth is that every health problem radiates out from our digestive system, because that's where everything that we ingest, that's where it starts.
And it's interesting because I remember in class you showed your eye,
To
because
Morse,
it was
yeah.
an iridology class, right?
Yeah.
And then he put it up on the camera,
It
remember?
was
So
pretty
we all got
fascinating
to
'cause
see
it was
it.
like the stereotypical.
And wow, you could see your intestinal ring
Yeah.
dark. Now, is that
The
sulfur?
malabsorption.
Was that the malabsorption ring,
I
or
think
was it
is-
chronic?
It's chronic malabsorption.
Okay, so
yeah.
chronic malabsorption right around your bowel wall. So no surprise, once you know iridology,
Backs
it's
it
all
up.
right in your eye, right? It backed it up that's the problem that you had.
But that
And-
was the early days, yeah. So that was before anything else. But obviously a lot of crap going on in my body, and because I didn't go outside and stuff like this. And I know when I was younger I had liver problems, because when I started drinking of age, I could barely handle anything, and I knew it was liver. It made me terribly sick. Ended up getting jaundice around 18, and changing my diet even minutely, it helped with those symptoms. But I still had the acne and all these issues that are so common now. So I went down a medical route to try and address that, because nothing else is really there when you're in that world. And that's when I took Accutane. Now Accutane is what did this to me. Genetically, I was predisposed to head this route anyway. My mother has fibromyalgia, has never been as bad as mine was, but the genetic weakness is there. And so when I took this medication, that flooded my body with acid chemistry, which is all that ever breaks down our bodies. Whether for her been food, stress, antibiotics, just lifestyle. For me, it was just a super drug, one of the most powerfully acidic drugs in the world right now, I would argue. Yeah, it's
And
like,
you know, so many kids are on Accutane. It's
And the-
crazy. They
the
still
array
do
of-
it like crazy.
the array of symptomology that you can get, like each person's so unique. Like BillyMaree's hair was falling out.
Yeah.
She had joint issues and
cut all my
stuff
hair
like
off.
that.
It was
Seriously?
I couldn't comb it. I couldn't even run my fingers through it without so much of the hair just falling out.
Wow. And so were you worried at that point that it
I
was
was
going to
so
become something
worried.
like what Daniel had?
Yeah, because we share similar symptoms with the scoliosis. I have a flat foot myself, and the hair just kept falling out and falling out. I was
She
scared
was
that
getting
I was.
joint issues.
Yeah,
Wow.
Everything was
And were you on Accutane
Yeah.
at the same time?
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Pretty funny.
And what was the turning point that made you realize it was that drug? Did it happen right after you took it so
Well,
you could know
when
that it was
he
the drug?
went to, well, from what he's told me, when he went to his doctor to get it prescribed and whatnot, they didn't explain in detail what it does to you. And when I saw that he was taking it, I said, because he was taking a little bit more than what you were meant to
taking, yeah.
take, well, what I was told to take.
Uh-huh.
And they had me going to get blood tests every so often so they could monitor,
Different
the way
levels.
my organs were functioning.
Uh-huh.
But they never told him that.
Yeah, they weren't really
They weren't
monitoring my
keeping an eye
body.
on
They were
anything.
Wow.
just giving me new
Yeah.
scripts, and I mean,
And how long were you on it before you
over a
started
year.
getting the
Oh,
symptoms?
symptoms probably honestly less than 3. Honestly, less than 3 months.
Dries
And,
out.
and when it started at 3 months, the first symptoms, did you think it was from the drug?
Nah, because it's so subtle at first, and I was doing exercise and gym for the first time. And I mean, how I said I wasn't very active. Well, that was when I started to be more active. I started working after I got over the gastrointestinal issues. I finally had the confidence to go to work, because it's like, why would I try and get a job when I can't even wake up properly in the morning and just sit in fetal position and wait for the pain to leave? So I got the job, started getting more active, but see, I'd already been stagnant. So there were so many things that set this up. But that's the thing, is every person's way of accumulating certain issues, and then now their symptoms lead them to a doctor that tells them that they fit into this category of fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
The reason why I had it could be very different to what led up to it, but then what's creating these symptoms can even be different. And that's where genetics in the eye plays a big role in being able to distinguish what areas are vital to work on first. Because if you're trying to attack a certain area first, that won't result in healing until you've dealt with, say, the parathyroid. So I've known this, until I regenerate the parathyroid, my body won't regenerate, because my issue lies in the calcium. It literally lies in the joints and the bones and the myelin
It's
sheath.
so funny because, Lloyd now, you've met Lloyd today, and we've talked, and I talked to you in class, and your story is so familiar, although so different. Like you guys are saying, for everybody, the journey can be quite different, right? But one thing that's the same for all of us, that no matter what you want to call it, fibromyalgia, idiopathic neuropathy, migraines, lupus, it doesn't matter, because there's no real diseases. It's all from this acidosis, because nobody understands the lymphatic system, and then they don't understand that lymphatic system drains into the kidneys, and most people's kidneys are shot, and kids don't move around like you guys were saying. You play video games and you don't do the usual active things.
Just
Then you
detach.
take a drug in addition for stuff, and you go downhill. And your generation versus mine, they do many more vaccinations. Kids are born to mothers who have way more stagnant and toxic lymph systems. So it's only getting worse. We're getting more genetically weak. So it's really interesting to hear you guys. I feel always so proud to meet young people like you guys that know already that, in some ways you can say that those horrible things are gifts, because you're only in your 20s, you guys, and you know this stuff. And I'm all my life, been studying health and seeing hundreds of patients, and really I'm so amazed that you guys you have so much wisdom at your age, because the world to get it, and the people that you've met along the way. And now to experience your profound healing, what better way to tell you what the truth is than to do that, right?
Confirmation is always welcome.
For sure.
But the thing for me is, the fact that we are young has helped us to open up to this more, because we had less years there where we were conditioned. So our ability to ingest this and apply it was much easier than having to unlearn so much junk, because there's a lot of junk that we have to unlearn before we can even step into something like this.
That's true.
Because the fear and all this. So
that's so true. And it's so many people are so locked into their belief system, or they're on the wrong path. Look at how popular the paleo diet is when you think about that in comparison to what we're all doing on our path with fruit and raw food, and they're eating a high protein diet. You just think oh my gosh, that's going to be horrible, right?
The fruit just strips everything down to the core, so that it's no more funny games. It's literally you and yourself, and you can use fruit and salads to kind of distract yourself, and the way paleo might satisfy people, and it's not going to heal them, but it caters to that emotional level, and that's why people gravitate towards it, because they can't fathom such a clean diet fruit, because it's not stimulating, and it just doesn't have that emotionally supportive response within the body. So it seems so left field to go this way, but this is just the most direct approach other than water fasting, which at our level now, it's hard for anyone to really, even people without chronic conditions, but especially people with the severe pain and stuff, it's hard for us to jump straight into something as vicious as a water fast.
Yeah, people are too sick to do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned about water fasting 40 years ago and have books on it, and there's clinics in Europe that used to do it, but truthfully now, I mean, people could die from a water fast because they're so toxic. So you're right. You need to get to a certain point to even be able to water fast, and fruit can get you there. And even with fruit, look how sick people get. Look at the healing crisis people have gone through. Oh my gosh, I've seen and heard a lot of stories of people on their fruit, and then they had to go back to eating salads and cooked veggies because they couldn't even handle the fruit, the toxification,
There's a time
the detox
for
symptoms.
fasting and a time for feasting. So like you got to rebuild and squeeze and break down and then go back in. But absolutely, there's so many different things you have to know to walk confidently and being able to connect and listen to the body and the needs of the body, because our mind can project and we can think we know what we need to do, but the body is always signaling the correct step to take. You just have to really tune into those subtle levels, and the answer will be there with where to place your next step. But
Daniel, when you were in that, so now let's say you were into that 3 months, you started getting symptoms, and now it turns into this full-on fibromyalgia within a year?
Yeah, it started out small. Like I'm in the gym, so I'm taking this medication, which is acidic, and I'm going to the gym and working my muscles and pushing my body to do a lot of activity, which creates acids as well. So now I'm going from being stagnant in my room, not doing much in the dark, like my body is out of rhythm with the universe, literally, and that can tie into so many things energetically, physically. You want to be in the sun, you want to be awake when the sun comes up, but I was waking up at midday. I just threw my body into like the opposite of what we're meant to do to live in a healthy, structured
living
lifestyle.
Against nature's law.
Against nature, exactly, perfectly said. And like this is where I started doing those healthy, quote unquote healthy things, like putting my body under probably a bit more stress than I could handle with exercise, and forcing myself to be healthy, and at the same time as taking this medication. So when I started getting pain in my wrist and then my elbow and then my glutes, even as a young child, they never really developed, never fired properly, and that can come down to so many things. Even like nerve impingement in the lower back can create problems with muscles firing. So it's very deep how it can play out, and we don't really need to know the intricacies of why this is. But essentially, I'd started working out and going to the gym and taking this medication to fix my skin problem that honestly wasn't that bad. Like if I had have done a juice fast back then, I would have cleaned this stuff up quick and I wouldn't have never had to look back.
Right.
But I wouldn't have taken it seriously. Yes. I wouldn't have learned throughout my path.
And eventually something would have kept creeping up, because you, like Dr. Morse says, you got to do the job and get it done. Yeah. Otherwise it comes back, you know, you got to finish
really
it.
Dig deep. But yeah,
so when you got into that horrible pain, how bad did it get?
I would say about a year in. So I'd come over to America when it was nearly at its worst. It was pretty damn bad. I could barely drive for many minutes at a time. I'd have to get out or crack my back. It just, lower back pain was just sizzling, burning my spine, everything around my muscles in my back. And at the time, just based on what we're educated with, I thought it was literally just back problems. I never correlated the pain with kidneys, but my kidneys were burning.
And as a homeopath, I'm always like, because we have like 75 words to describe pain. So I'd say, is it burning, ripping, tearing, shooting, you know?
It was everything.
But it sounds like that was one of the symptoms, was burning.
In my back. Yeah,
really?
Burning, rip, all of that. It's funny because it was just everything at once. And that was a year in. Then I came over here, had a holiday, but I had the luxury of sitting when I wanted to sit, resting and stuff, whereas when I was at home I might not be working much, but I used to barely be able to stand on my feet for 2 hours without just being in such a crippling pain that I would be staring at the people that I work with, just completely detached. I'd look into their eyes and they'd see the anger with how much pain I'm feeling in my body. it just drives you to a point where you can't relate to anyone, because like you literally kind of can't relate to yourself.
Yeah,
when
well,
you're so
because you're
distracted by
never
that.
free, and so in the end,
Yeah.
it's like I'm just doing this series of podcasts with Dr. Hanscom, and he talks about how pain is always a trap, and then once you're in the trap, then you're angry.
Yeah, big
And
cycle.
once you're angry, then you're like bitter about your life, and it's just a big spiral downhill, right? So to get well, it's in addition to getting well through diet and stuff, you have a lot of emotional healing to deal with the anger that you have to go
Yeah.
through when you're in pain.
And then when you go to sleep in pain, you wake up knowing you're going to be in pain. And just that expectation of being the same way the next day can be ingraining.
So what breaks that cycle? Because so many
Exactly.
people are in that. What would you say to them?
Surrender. Get
And-
over it. Because
yeah.
honestly, like, I have sympathy for everyone who's ever gone through even the smallest of things. But on some level, you have to literally get over it. And as hard as it might be, the story we have to tell about our lives is maybe we suffered someone else's actions, or we did something that we have guilt over. Whatever it is, just literally get over it. Because as long as we're sitting there feeding that thought, that idea, that memory, like, you're going to wake up in pain because you went to bed in pain. And that's where eventually, and sometimes the only way you can do this, like, I might be able to tell you get over it, but the only way that can ultimately happen is by your holding on so much because you're not sure how to let go, that you end up exhausting yourself trying to just get by. That it's not even a conscious decision. You just literally get over it. You literally give up trying to hold on to that because you're so burned out by your
Exhausted.
life. Yeah. And that's where I was, is like the reason why I give thanks for all the pain I've been through is because it helped me let go of stuff that I didn't even realize I was holding. Because we're so conditioned, and when we have to face these kind of levels of experience, and like, people have it much worse than I ever had it. I had a lot of support with BillyMaree and my family, and the like comfortable, relaxing environment where I'm not worried about money so much. Like, I have my own insecurities about that, but I know that my parents would support me if it became something serious. And all these things can help free us. But I suffered quite a bit compared to most people, but I look at it as such a beautiful thing because it helped me let go of so much. It literally structured me a certain way that I can go out into the world now and be able to face things without all these kind of constructs in the mind and projecting all these ideas and insecurity. I've let go of a lot.
But
really
you know,
just
it's so
present with
easy to
myself.
say let go, you know, because I
is.
know this from even being a professional athlete. You try to let go of a lot of things, and it's in the moment to moment. It's kind of like a mindfulness, like trying to just stay present with who you are and not let yourself attach to all these places that your mind can go, right?
Yeah.
But what kind of like advice can you give when people don't know how to let go or think that they've let go when
See,
maybe
that's-
they haven't, right?
that's what I
Because
was
this
gonna
is
say,
the hard
yeah.
thing. Many people think they've let go when they really haven't.
Yeah.
So-
Telling yourself to be present, even though you're putting your attention on the concept of presence. The fact that you're thinking about presence means you're not present.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm learning more and more, is like, even before this, in a lot of ways, despite the trauma and the emotional stuff that I've dealt with in the past and our upbringings, we all have individual circumstances that lead us to be certain ways, but I've been very efficient at just being very rooted in that moment. And we all have things like books and phones and music and movies and stuff that can distract us from that, but like, on a moment-to-moment basis, I'm very good at just being there. And this is where, when I finally started to heal myself now, and recently just came over a very big wave of healing where it was like a quantum leap. My body just changed quite dramatically in a small period of time. I realized that I'd never actually sat with myself and been able to truly feel the idea that one day I would be free to use my body again. And like, as much as we think we're there, any advice that I could try and give, the only advice I could really give that would make sense to me in hindsight from where I was at would just be to say, like, just walk with it. You know what I mean? Like, we all have this idea that we need to be somewhere, but if we're present in that moment, that's how we're going to get there. Because we can't just convince our higher selves or this part of ourselves that's capable of more to be that in that instant. Like in certain areas that holds truth, but it's hard to break through that like that. And the only way to either transcend these limitations or like release ourselves from these kind of self-created prisons is to just be present and accept where you're at in that moment, and then make the best decision you can make in that moment to get you to that next moment. Do whatever feels right in that moment. Even if you're in a place that doesn't feel comfortable, you're not relaxed, you're not happy, you're not healthy, you don't look good when you stare yourself in the mirror. Like that moment there, that moment you're in, that you're feeling a certain way is inevitable, but the next moment there's room for potential growth or whatever. So if you're present and doing what feels best for you in that moment, in every moment, you'll get there. And it's just certain people have more karma, or certain people have more debris to clear and unwind.
For sure.
But it's gonna take longer if you fight it than if you just walk with it.
Yeah, and I think, from a person who had 43 years of horrible migraine pains, I can hear what you're saying, and I think one of the things that's helpful is the more, and the thing that helped me is that it wasn't every day. Yeah. So like with Lloyd, the pain is every day, and I can imagine, because I know what a painful day was, and I know what a painful 10 days were to have. Yeah. But to imagine 10 years of every day, that takes it up another notch. So what I think is that the more that we get focused on the pain, which when you're in the pain, it's hard to think about anything else, but the more that we get focused on it, it's like you recognize yourself as the person with pain. But really, our bodies are not us. They're our vehicles here, and we all have this amazing love, light, whatever people want to call it, soul, whoever wants to describe it in whatever way. And I think when people are in these, especially the chronic pain syndromes like you had, I think it's hard to disassociate the light of who we are inside to the person's body, and so I think the way I'm kind of getting it from what you're saying is, if you can just be with it, then you're not fighting anything, because it's the fighting it that doesn't ever let it go away. That's like a constant work, right? But when you just be with it, it's almost like be here now, be here now, be here now, be here now, and then you're here. You just kind of have
to surrender to it. And like the thing is with physical pain is it roots you in the physical body. So then your ability
That's what I'm trying to say. That's exactly the word. The physical pain roots you and locks you into your body. And you lose connection to who you really are, because you're rooted into the physical body and not to who you really are. You become your physical body and you become your pain, but you have lost sight, because especially if it's for so many years now, you really kind of almost have lost sight who you really are. So one way out of that is to, whatever we want to say, meditate, but get to that place where you can just keep going in to try to feel the spirit of who you really are, because that in a way disconnects you from your pain for that moment, right?
Well, when we're locked into, and this is where I struggle, because my nature as a kid was very not spiritual, but just like kind and loving, and I wasn't aware what I was doing. It was just who I was. But as I became more of the suffering personality that I developed, and you can get lost in the victim role and you feel scared to do anything with who you are, but it exposes the lack of spirituality that even existed before that. So maybe we were kind of spiritual, but it still exposes that there's room for more, and it pushes you to face that. So by being consumed by the pain, it urges the soul to look deeper, to find itself. So this is where I've said to many people that I've met recently, and pretty much everyone, I express that the pain that we're experiencing is the universe using our bodies to wake our souls up.
I agree, and that's so cool, because this is a conversation I'm so happy to have, because when I've talked a lot on my podcast about, I've had Dr. Hanscom on probably 4 times, and he's like a pain doctor, but he's not one that does vegan diet or a fruit diet, or so I like to take his advice that he has talked about and tips about how to stay in the moment, how to deal with anger and anxiety and these kinds of things. But what you're talking about is what I've always thought, because not only are you on the journey of eating the right diet to heal your body, but you're talking on a much deeper level than even just the physical of what we put on our plate. And what you're saying is, like, when you get locked into your body, you're trapped into the physical, you're being trapped into the physical body, which is not who you really are. And so now you're saying that that was almost a gift for you, because although you were this nice, kind, naturally kind person, that doesn't mean you're a spiritual awakened person.
I wasn't consciously there. You have to be present and conscious in every activity, or every part of yourself as it's expressing has to be done consciously. And this is where all the suffering, and that's the only way we're going to grow, is by suffering, really. But like all the suffering that I went through, like, was like a rapid, like, I was just pushed through all these levels in such a short period of time, where like you said, we're young and we're able to apply this information. We are blessed because we haven't had to walk down the wrong route and then walk all the way back to walk the right
I've walked
way.
a lot of those routes, you guys, and I'm like, that's why I do what I do, because if I can get any young person out there to learn from all my mistakes, what didn't work, right, then you guys can start and take off on a path that's already can let some of those other stuff go. And
but the crazy thing is now is, like, you guys weren't that bad until at like 30s, 40s. My mum was never really that bad. She had scoliosis as a kid, but it was just like she could observe she had scoliosis. It wasn't that gave her so much pain.
Right.
Whereas these kids now coming out, and I'm not even that bad compared to some at such a young age, so degenerate in their body and broken down that they're suffering the way a 50-year-old would, like a chronic 50-year-old, and not just the average.
No,
And they're suffering.
Teens. Yeah, or they're having cancer before they're 8 years old.
Exactly.
I mean, Lloyd used to say to me, like, why are so many kids getting cancer? But people just don't get about toxicity, that when you're getting pregnant and then you're passing all your lymphatic system and all your toxins on. So it's really
this stuff is shaking the ground up. This is breaking up a lot of things that doesn't serve this planet. And like, as much as we want to whinge about suffering and war and famine and stuff like this, is all essential pieces to a grand scheme. It's a very large thing at play right now, and all these different levels are here to help us overcome, but we get stuck focusing on and attaching to the negative concepts, and we miss the opportunity to not ignore them but act in a different direction. And all it does is we just change our frequency and untune ourselves from those levels, and that's how we overcome. And all these people that are suffering at a young age and going through this is really, like, I can be able to say it because I've walked through and I'm out the other end, where being taught what without this kind of pain and suffering would take lifetimes, we're learning it in one life. We're waking up in a few decades and now being able to walk with certain, Morse likes to call it golden keys, but like these kind of little cheat codes that most people out in the world right now aren't aware of. So they're running around with their heads chopped off, not sure how to like manifest what they want, create a life that their higher self wants. Instead, they're being stuck in their lower needs and their like more primitive behaviors, and they're not really even confident enough to demand more out of their own life. And this is where all this crap that's happening with the pharmaceuticals that is accelerating our breaking down of our bodies, this is all, as negative as it feels, and especially to walk through it, it's actually what's going to liberate us. And that's the opposite end of such negative stuff, is the duality. You flip over and it's the rebirth of this planet.
Exactly. And you can't rebirth without it destroying first.
Even the most beautiful things have to come out of pain and suffering. Like a pregnant woman has to go through that final purge and that release and so much screaming and agony, and then it's done.
Right.
And that fresh life continues on
But it's interesting to me because, you know, a lot of it is about becoming awakened. And when you're, you know, I listened to your story, and I'm sure if you look back a year and a half or 2 years, you're probably blown away how open and spiritually you are and how awakened you've become. And I'm sure you too, BillyMaree, seeing where he was 2 years ago, right? It must be
mind-blowing.
Is it? And,
we were all, my mentor, 73 years old right now, myself, we were all opening to the spirituality stuff. She very naturally at a young age, even 3 years old probably, was naturally spiritually connected. She has a very good recollection of certain events and memories, and just she knows herself at such a young age. Is something that I didn't have back then, as well as my mentor. And we all got together before my condition got chronic, so we were already opening spiritually. And this
so
is
you
where,
were on the beginning of that pathway.
but this is where, like, we're never given something that we can't handle. So like, I was given her, my mentor, my parents, even despite their inability to connect and understand what I'm going through, they still played an important role and supported me in an area that I needed support in. And all these people have given us the strength to carry on and walk with us to where we're all headed, because we're, like I said, never given anything that we can't handle, but we are going through these levels because right now on this planet we are being purged emotionally and physically in order to wake up. And this is where it's like the darkest before dawn concept is like, things outside might seem a bit weird right now, but there's things going on under the surface that is changing the structure of this planet and really waking us up, and we have to suffer. I was in San Francisco recently volunteering at a meditation, like a yoga practice thing where they teach like traditional yoga, not just like the stretching mobility stuff, but cultivating energy within the body. And so I was there volunteering my time, and I learned a lot through that. And the day after, I went to San Francisco and just hung around at a botanical gardens, and I saw a man busking, a dark-skinned man, and he's been through a lot. I had a quick conversation with him, and he's traveled and he's seen how the world's changing, and he's stuck in this place of kind of complaining about the problems. And it's clear he's been through a lot of trauma, and he's been locked into this place where his music, his whole personality is literally screaming from this place of lack. And this he sees that this world is lacking so much, but it's the victim mentality that traps us there. And I tried to explain to him that he's saying, why can't we just love? Why can't we just have peace? I'm saying we can and we will, but this is the process in which we have to go through to get it. And if you stop, this is where it can be like, if you're trying to heal but you're focusing on where you're at, you're not walking with it, and you still be present, but you don't get stuck on focusing on the negative. And you don't even have to really walk. You'll be moved there by law of the universe is carrying us there, and only we can get in the way of that movement.
That's what's so beautiful, is that nature's law is nature's law, and when yes, we can get in the way of it, but then, you know, there's no way to stop. You can say, like I have, you know, even when we did our 11-day great fast, we're not in a place to lose a lot of weight, but we knew we probably would, because if I have malabsorption and Lloyd has it, and you have a bunch of cells you got to get rid of, you're going to lose more weight. And everybody gets so focused on the weight. You go, oh, you're so skinny, you know, but it's like you're saying, you got to get rid of the destruction before you can rebuild. And if your goal is to rebuild, then you got to get rid of those dead cells.
On a weak foundation.
You cannot build on a weak foundation. So, and it's the same with our planet. It's the same with everything. So, you know, it's really a difficult place to be sometimes, because it's hard not to be focused on your weight. But I don't focus on that. But, you know, other people, oh my gosh, you've lost so much weight, or you're so skinny.
People think that skinniness equates to health, and this is the misconception, because people that are overweight can be malabsorbed. It's just their body, their toxicity is holding things in a different way. So they've got a backed up lymph system. Doesn't mean that they're not still malabsorbed and not ingesting what they're eating. So people can still look like they're absorbing their food, but they're just holding toxicity. That's a very big difference.
There's a very big difference.
But skinniness never equates to health, because like I've dropped a lot of weight, and this is the healthiest I've ever felt. It's just my physical body's capabilities might not be as much as like being able to do 20 pull-ups in the gym like I used to. But as I continue to regenerate my body, my tissue and everything will continue to get healthier and stronger.
Yeah, because you're now in the building phase instead of
absolutely.
the breaking down phase.
And I still have malabsorption to work on, but the fact that my bones and my joints can regenerate now from the parathyroid regenerating. Without that regeneration in the parathyroid, I was stagnant because the rest of the healing that I needed to feel better was coming after a certain thing was being dealt with.
And did you do parathyroid glandulars for how long?
Yeah. First time I took it once, and then I waited a while and took it again, but I'm sure it helped. But when I did the water fast, which I'll get into that more, the only two areas my body really worked on, and I thought I would get healing pains in my joints and stuff, but it really only worked in my bowels. Was sweat, like my body was grinding and squeezing out mucoid plaque and like all kinds of malabsorption stuff, but my bowels and my throat, and a doctor would have said, oh, you have a throat infection. But all I did was stop eating, and I just drank distilled water, and after a year straight of detox and herbs and very little healing crisis, I developed a lot of mucus and gunk in my throat, and that's not because of anything other than the fact that I gave my body time to push it out.
Yeah.
And I was literally squeezing so much gunk out of there, and honestly the most came after the fast. It just kept coming every day, breaking with juices, even celery not being
Would you
astringent.
cough it out?
I mean,
were you actually getting mucus out?
Yeah.
Like coughing?
It was resting at the back of his throat.
You could see it sitting there. It was literally being pushed
thick yellow
out
mucus.
through the cells.
Amazing.
But it would also have been dripping down from in the sinus, but coming up from deeper in the throat, in the tonsils, and some of it was yellow and orange, and then I got stuff that was like literally brown, like it was like rubber, it was like tar.
Wow.
And this is generational weakness. This is my mother's had a weak parathyroid from the moment she was born. I know this for a fact.
And it's very interesting. When we did 11 days on grape, our throats hurt so bad we couldn't hardly talk to each other. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting, because we'd already been doing a lot of detox, like you'd said, and just eating grapes alone already made it like achy, headachy, crazy sore throat, really bad sore throat.
Well, I was in and out of small healing crisis like that on my full year of fruit and herbs, but I never had anything even close to that until the water fast.
And how many days was your water fast?
16. So
wow.
I only like, some people might say that's big, but some people go 3 weeks, 40 days, even more, and like that depends on how big you were. And I'm skinny, so I can only break down so much tissue, but that just changed everything. And as I've regenerated the parathyroid, and I'm still every day now, like not as much, but I'm still getting mucus up every day. And some of that can be new mucus, and you'll see that as like clear or white, but I'm still getting orange, dark stuff up.
Did you see it in your iridology, in your eyes? Did you see the throat issue, or did you did you have a lot of sinus head stuff in your eye?
Hypothyroidism so that's hypo, slowed down, very cold, and I had that for years before this. And I've regenerated,
did you have any sinus issues, or did you see it in your eye, like a lot of stuff up there in the brain area?
My mum's weakness is definitely adrenal glands, kidneys, throat, and obviously the genetically weak parathyroid. My father's issues has always been sinus, upper respiratory, in behind his eyes and his ears. He was in hospital as a kid with ear infections and stuff like that. So I've got not so much of that, although I do, but mostly my mother's weakness. I'm very much my mother's side. So like I've inherited more of her junk than his. But a lot of it in the sinus, I'm always getting stuff out of my back of my throat and my nose even still, because we just have like
amazing
layers and layers of this stuff out.
It's just the hardest thing with the water fast is, I can't really do it and work. Time to take a break and have a nice glass of juice or a piece of high vibrational fruit that's filled with huge amounts of biophotons. or just go get a drink of pure water. And if you want to drink the purest and most healing water, then you should consider getting a countertop distiller. The one I love is made by My Pure Water, and the link is on my website, vidalspeaks.com. I would love to ask you guys to also subscribe to both this podcast and to my YouTube channel. My podcast shares interviews filled with great knowledge and stories that will teach you and inspire you. And my YouTube videos are my way of teaching you directly and talking with you directly. You can even send me your health questions to questions@vidalspeaks.com, and then I'll answer those via my videos. And also, please consider to use my Amazon banner. You can find that also on my website. And once you click on that banner, it will take you to the Amazon page. And from there, you can just bookmark that page right there to your bookmarks bar. And then you have a shortcut way to just go there each time after that. And thanks to those of you who are already doing it. But if you're not, please consider, because it's such an easy way to help support my work. So please consider using that Amazon banner. And lastly, if you're willing to donate and able to donate, you can do so also on my website, or you can commit to a small monthly donation via my Patreon page. Just go to patreon.com. And don't forget, please keep sharing the show and leaving reviews. Thanks so much, you guys. You know I love you. BillyMaree, I would like to ask you, as a partner watching somebody be in this horrible pain syndrome and then just seeing the transformation, how's it been for you to see where he was at, and could you imagine that this is where it was going to end up? Did you expect it to be this fast or this long, or how has it been?
I never really put a time frame on it. It's just something that I knew that was going to happen. I never really focused on like, oh, it's going to happen here or there or wherever. I was just like, it's going to happen, that's it. And now that it's starting to unfold, I couldn't be happier. Like the other night when he called me and then he hung up, like I just cried tears of joy, because it's all that I've ever wanted for him. I want him to be happy, healthy. And I guess when you are playing the role as a partner for someone who is going through something such as this, walking this path, does become stressful.
You take on their pain.
Yeah, and that's the part I was getting to. It's very important that you don't take on the emotional weight of it, because even though they are kind of the victim by default, you begin to paint yourself as a victim, and then other issues arise from carrying that. It starts exposing the weaknesses in the relationship.
It just rebounds negative energy.
Which is already an added stress on top of the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
Well, it's already a stress because it's hard to have a healthy relationship with somebody that's in chronic pain because they're so limited on what they can do.
But at the same
time,
time,
like a loving, detached compassion, despite investing yourself in their need to heal. What I always encouraged her with is to just kind of,
you have to take time for yourself.
Yeah,
you have to take time for yourself.
Not get lost in another person's pain, no matter what that is. And that's where, like, she did have to help me with physical things like lifting. When I was real bad, I couldn't even lift a box of fruit because I was scared that, which it would every time. I was scared, like, oh, maybe this week I'll be able to. But I ended up giving up because I just kept going back to trying to be able to do things and failing. And just something like lifting a box of fruit would pull my scapula out behind my shoulder, into my neck, up into my head, and then that would radiate down lower back into the hip, into the IT band, and just it would literally just bang from one simple thing. And then she would adopt the pain. She would know what had happened again. Now she's feeling my energy, and it's literally become her burden as well.
Yeah, it is a burden, and it's a whole separate lesson to learn how to detach.
Yeah, I feel like you really have to develop the patience and understanding to deal with it, because, you know, as you said, I was helping him with a lot of the physical things, and after a while you start to feel like a function, and that's not healthy, especially when you are holding an intimate relationship with someone. Right. You don't want to feel like they're using you or you're being taken advantage of. You need to understand where they're at, and you also need to assert your own independency, which is something that obviously I had to learn as I continued to walk with him. At first, I wasn't aware of the fact that I was carrying his pain and that I was involving myself to the point where I was putting myself at a disadvantage.
She got so identified with it that she lost her person, and that comes from the compassion or the love or whatever you want it to be, whatever's motivating you to help that person. And it's such an accumulated thing over time that you get more and more exhausted, then you literally lose yourself in that because it is a draining thing.
Yeah, I know. I've been there with Lloyd. It's been a long 10 years. But because I also am a practitioner and I've seen a lot of really sick patients, I really had to learn how to detach, like after a patient left, and maybe it's a really heavy case of a cancer patient or something, and I would kind of have to learn how to not let their energy like get into me or get me down or and I'm a very sensitive person that way, so it took me some time. But with your partner, it's so different because it's 24 hours and you Lloyd would feel so bad. He'd always say, like, you've never almost known me, and I haven't really, because we've been together 12 years and he started this problem.
You've not known him before.
Gosh, I'm like, say from August when I met him, and then this started the next May. So it was kind of really like 5 months of knowing him where he could do stuff. And then it was like 8 years of him almost not being able to get out of a chair and being suicidal. So it's been a journey for both of us. Sure. So I can relate kind of, in a way more to your story, but I understand what you're saying because I've felt those in my situation with headaches. But, as I said, when they're not every day, I could have 10 days free a month. And I maybe only had 10 days bad that month, but some days it was 20 days bad that month. But I still would have 10 days free. And so I kind of got that short experience of like, oh my God, no headache. It's so fantastic. And then, it's so different. But then to be the person walking beside the person that you love, you wonder what's harder sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
To be the one with the pain or to see the one you love with pain.
And the connection that we have with that person when we're both struggling the same problem, and now their energy's unloading back into you based on the energy that you're creating, and they're absorbing that by being around it, that can feed back into the problem and kind of stagnate. And that's where sometimes even like cutting barriers down and kind of breaking up things, and this is where I said earlier, like, sometimes the only way to address this emotional issue is to just change patterns, change habits, because the only thing stopping us from growing and opening up on that level is maybe we, and I've said this all the time, as humans have become so efficient at outrunning our own shit. And we might not even realize in that moment, but it's just this innate part of us that is so effective at kind of avoiding this emotional work. And it's not like a conscious thing. It's just the fear has ingrained us.
And I don't know what's more common, but either I found that people are doing that. It's like an avoidance of it, but they're not consciously aware of it. Of course.
They're just trying to do something.
Everybody would tell you that they're trying to do everything they can to get better and to want to be better. But I know as a practitioner, the body speaks. So someone can have done 20 years of therapy and tell you all the right things, but their body language and their body symptoms are telling you that they haven't gotten over it, although they're telling you that they have. And on the other side, I feel like, what's worse, like either you're not getting over it and you're not consciously aware of that, or you think you got over it. And they're both bad places to be in, because if you think you've handled everything, and then that kind of shuts you down to being open, that you could clear anything out.
Exactly.
But so I think that's actually really good advice, that you just have to keep practicing walking with it. I remember when Lloyd was being coached by Dr. Hanscom, he told him, Lloyd, you just need to live life. Just live your life regardless. He said, just live your life.
Just be receptive to what, because in every moment the universe, the divine, God, whatever you want to call it. It's just a different word for a concept of something that we can't necessarily perceive, but we're trying to label it and understand it. But whatever you want to label it as, just be receptive to what it in each moment is trying to teach you, because it's always there ready to help you expand. And you don't really have to think about anything. Just set the intention to be open to. Sometimes it's going to rip you to pieces. Sometimes it's going to kind of gently pat you on the head and help you and have that kind of quiet, more intimate moment. Then sometimes it's going to be very loud or very quiet. You have to go inside and deal with things, and just be willing to do that in each moment, and things will start to break up. But yeah, carrying other people's pain and doing this with someone else can kind of stagnate us, but we need to experience that to see how we can be compulsive or unconsciously acting in certain ways. And when that exhausts us, and this is why I always say some people just haven't suffered enough, the more you suffer until it becomes a conscious thing that you're doing, till you can see that cycle, now you're capable of doing something with that.
Changing your pattern, you mean, of whatever, just do something totally different.
Because we have so many blockages, and that's where, like, we love our partners that suffering, and if she was suffering like that too, I can't act like I wouldn't have done the exact same thing as she did. And eventually both of us got exhausted with how we've dealt with the situations that we've been presented, like the circumstances in our lives. But
so did it put a strain on the relationship at some point?
it just exposed. The only reason why anyone can't operate in a relationship is just internal stuff.
Yep.
And it just exposed and mirrored our own internal crap. And that's the blessing, because now we can look at it objectively and address it either on our own or together, but always within ourselves. We're not looking at the other person to do it. But when it comes to carrying someone else's pain, and the way that she kind of unconsciously adopted my pain, and then because she's walking around with it, it's now draining me again. So I'm getting like secondhand draining from my own problem.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it.
And eventually it had to come to the point where, I mean, it's not like we should say, oh, I don't care about you, like, why don't you go suffer and I'll just ignore it. But effectively, the way you would have to feel would be the same as if you literally were just like, I don't care. That's the same exact approach you have to have.
Yeah, because you have to detach, and that may look like you don't care, although you're doing it because you care so much.
Looking at the bigger picture.
Love isn't losing yourself in those
that's
negative
the
levels.
life lesson that everybody has to learn, because you guys are young, and how beautiful you can learn it, but what a hard situation to learn it. But these difficult situations are always our best teachers, right?
Super grateful.
But I think back to all either failed relationship or marriage, and you think, you know, one of always the weaknesses is that you try to merge with the person, right? And you can do that, but you can't lose yourself. You can't give yourself to the other person 100%, because then you lose yourself. But you have to be yourself, and you have to allow them to be themselves, and then you can come together to a common place and be the couple, right?
Exactly.
But I think so many people give themselves away, and then with that comes expectations that then you should be like more like me, and then you're going to expect me to be more like you, because you stop accepting the person. But when we met, you accepted me for who I was, and you liked me then. But as you are together longer, people seem to come so much together.
You start identifying with the other person.
Exactly, and you lose yourself.
And you can get that in someone else caring about you so much. And we can be so driven by guilt, and we think that the guilt, we are motivated by the guilt, and we think that we have to then suffer with them, because if we're not suffering, we would feel guilty that it's not affecting us.
True.
So we throw ourselves in the deep end. But sometimes when we do that, we lock the other person in, because now that person feels guilty that you're suffering. So on some level, and this is what happened with me and her, is she adopted and absorbed so much of my sadness, but just because she's feeling it secondhand doesn't mean that it's going to save me from feeling it.
Yeah.
So now
Right.
we're both stuck.
That's
But
Yeah,
sometimes,
that's exactly.
sometimes when now that person's locked in, now that reinforces where you're at. And this is where me and her had to break through a lot, where I said, free yourself from this. And eventually life made us free ourselves both from that. Now we had to detach. We took time apart. And it was in freeing and myself, but in freeing herself from that bondage, that relationship, now I could step back objectively and see what was going on, see how I was, see where it led me. And that was healing.
And how was it for you when you went your separate ways for a while? Did it feel freeing, or did you feel more guilty? Or
No, it felt amazing.
Because you
I was able to reassert
lighter?
myself, yeah. And also it made me realize that, a lot of this crap that I'm carrying is not mine. And now that I'm in an environment where I'm free of this,
Yeah.
weight lifted off my shoulders, and I'd obviously still go around to his, check up on him, make sure he's okay. And I found that each time I went to see him and I left, I would leave feeling sad.
Mm-hmm.
So then I could recognize, okay, a lot of what I was carrying was not mine. But now that I am free of carrying his stuff, I can focus on my stuff that I've been carrying.
Yeah, it redirects us and points to what is really ours. But this is what I mean. We have to go through these levels of famine and war and all these negative, mundane,
Right.
kind of like empty and pointless sufferings to see what it really is. We have to go through that to scratch out and bring light to it. And this is where we may as well accept the fact that this process has to occur. And this is where, if you just completely surrender to your healing journey, you'll get there. But if you're constantly battling yourself and you're at war with healing, if you're approaching your healing journey like you're going into war every day, you're going to burn out. Eventually you're going to get shivved, just how it's going to play out, because you can't win a war with the body. You have to become it and realize that it's there to help you and do its best in each moment. And that's when I did the water fast and surrendered to the body, waited for my body to bring certain things to the surface, and that's when our relationship actually shifted that way, mid water fast. So the water fast is always such a powerful thing, because it literally exhausted me to a point where now my energy is different. She sees I'm literally sitting there fasting and so deep in ketosis. Now it changes her energy, because when you're in a relationship with someone, you're so connected, bouncing off their energy. And I was so exhausted and just couldn't play games anymore, and everything had to be just, every word coming out was so correct.
Honest.
And and it brought that with her as well, and that's when everything started to shift. And then as that all lifted, and all these different complications and diversities in our lives pointed at so many things, then we could kind of come to understand why we are a certain way. So every negative aspect, if you want to label it, every negative aspect that we go through is pointing to a positive if you're able to break through the limitation that you've got in your mind or your emotions. Something has been set in the way you are, and the only reason you're suffering it is because that idea or that concept of how you are and how you're meant to be isn't aligned with truth. And it's just trying to reroute and reprogram your mannerisms, your ideas, and kind of dissolve the negative aspects of yourself that are just draining your energy and stopping you from living an ultimate life.
So I want to ask both of you, do you think that a person who starts on this fruit journey and raw food because either maybe they're sick or they just want to really elevate their health, but most people do something like that more because they have something they need to heal.
Yeah.
Do you think that eventually would, if they stayed on a journey, if a person would start, especially a high fruit diet, do you think eventually they have to become more spiritually awakened through the diet itself?
Absolutely. I think inevitably, if you're putting living food in your body and high vibrational fruits and stuff that's grown right, it's alive, it's electric, by default it's raising your voltage
For sure.
for lack of a better word. It's
Yeah.
going to help wake you up. And this is where I find like people might catch on to this lifestyle and reject it. Those people just aren't ready. They're unconsciously, they're accepting within themselves and making the agreement that is too far out of their field. But anyone that can find this information and jump on board is doing so because their soul or their higher
They're
self
already at a
or
level where they're receptive to it.
they're ready.
So do you think, because BillyMaree, it sounds like you were like very spiritually aware when you were young. So do you think if a person starts the journey very opposite of you, like maybe doesn't even believe in that stuff, but they heard eating fruit could heal them, so they did that? And do you feel like even people like that, because of the high angstroms of energy and fruit and stuff, would eventually become more awakened to stuff like that
I
through
believe
the
so.
journey?
Naturally so. Especially when you're transitioning from a diet that dulls all the senses. When you are transitioning into something such
Sedates.
as... Yeah, exactly. And then when you are, ingesting living foods, there's no way that you can escape the natural elevation of that.
Yeah, that's what I think, because sometimes that's the easier way for people to start, because like you said earlier, sometimes it's easy, you tell people, okay, here's what you need to do for your physical body. Well, people they're difficult sometimes because of the world we live in, but it's a simple set of directions to do. Take these herbs, eat this diet, simple, done. But to tell people, okay, now you have to deal with your own crap, and you need to emotionally, and you need to open, and you need to stay in the moment, and you need to... These are like, it's a lot to take on, but it's also not tangible for many people. Yeah. And if you've never been on a conscious level of awareness of how to do any of that, some people feel totally lost and they don't know if they're doing it or not. But I think it's like, I used to say that with vegans. I knew vegans like me that couldn't eat animals, and that's why they became a vegan.
Just by your nature.
But then I know a lot of people that became a vegan because they were sick. And they wanted to get healthy. And they actually said to me, I don't care. I'm not doing this for the animals. I do it because I need to get well. That's the only reason I'm doing it. And sure enough, 4 or 5 years of being vegan, they care about the animals. They care about the planet. They're much more, empathetic. They have much more empathy in the world for other people. Compassion. That's the word I'm taking.
Well, when you're taking care of yourself, it's easier to be open to those attitudes.
Yeah. So I think eventually people get there if they would stay on the journey. I can't imagine
But what I was gonna say is, don't underestimate how effective we can be at resisting our own ascension. Does that make sense? So just because you're on this lifestyle, if someone is deeply ingrained and conditioned and stuck in a victim role and really having a hard time to break out of certain paradigms, it can still take a long time to break through unless you've finally accepted where you're at and been able to kind of have gratitude for what that's brought into your life, if that makes sense.
Exactly. I agree.
Because I was in a place a few months ago where I was kept saying and almost praying, like, I want to be able to wake up and feel gratitude and feel these emotions. Because I know they're there, but I just can't connect with them. Now, a lot of the days I wake up and I just can't believe my life. But some people are so almost, they're not aware of it, but they're almost so in love with their suffering. And it's this story they want to tell. And that's why I say, don't be shocked at how effective we can be at resisting these vibrations that are trying to help raise us up with the fruit. And absolutely, that can help point us into a direction of spirituality and whatever that means for the individual. But to expand ourselves and bring spirituality, to me, is bringing consciousness to everything that you do.
Right. And it's so true, because I had patients like that who, I would say some people need their disease because that is their identity, is their disease, right?
And those are the people that don't heal because they are, and I've seen people online in the Facebook groups. This is how I became so connected in a network of people now, is the Facebook groups. And the ones that aren't healing are the ones that wake up every day and write posts about their struggles. and they're saying, my cystic fibrosis, my rheumatoid arthritis, and today this, and it's just like,
stop talking about your
let
pain.
go of the narrative.
Let go
literally
of it.
forget.
Yeah.
And if you feel these negative emotions, observe them. And this is what Morse is. This is why I pay homage to Morse, because he says to detach from your thoughts and just watch them, because it's the ego that feeds into this, and it wants to create this victim mentality. And I'm not going to act like I don't still have these thoughts, but I'm able to sit back and watch them now. And when you create that disconnect with them, and now you're on, not to like layer it, but now you're above that thought. You're looking down on it, and you can see it's this mundane thought that's just wants to pull you back to that victim mentality. When you're above it in that sense, that's when you're open to healing. But if you are the thought, I'm the victim, I'm the cystic fibrosis victim, then you're literally conveying that that is who you are. And so essentially you're trying to preserve
your
yourself.
identity.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The
your identity.
identification with the disease, it's almost as if it validates their fear.
Exactly.
It
And to
recreates
lose
the
it,
disease
one
every
time
day.
I asked a patient, what would getting well look like to you? And she says, honestly, I have no idea. I couldn't even relate to an identity of myself without my disease. But this is why she was searching for 40 years from one practitioner to another, because it was her identity, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think that's very well said, and I think that's so true, because victimhood is a super powerful role. We don't realize the power behind being a victim. It's one of the most...
Sometimes you don't even realize that
And
you are playing that role.
Right, and we all do it in certain circumstances, I'm sure, but a person in a long time of pain or pain syndromes, I mean, they're there because pain eventually equals trapped, equals anger, and then you feel the victim.
Yep.
So it's...
I got to a certain point where, and it frustrated me because I was so reliant on other people for help, like with her with lifting, my mentor with massages, and I'll go back to telling my story quickly because there's a bit more that I'd like to express. But all these people helping me and investing all their time, and that creates guilt within you, and you feel sorry that these people have to devote their time to you. But then it comes back to you, and you are like, oh, poor me, because all these people are helping me. Where you really should be looking at it like, well, I have this problem, yes, but look at the fact that I have these people here that are supporting me.
Because I'm making the conscious choice to help you.
Yeah.
It's not out of the guilt. It's not, oh, this person's suffering, I have to help them, because I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
It's more of the fact that a person I love is suffering. I have the decision to help them.
You have the time to do it.
I have the means to help them. I have the energy to help. So I'm going to help.
Why
If
wouldn't
I
you?
can, I will.
But you can, like for me, get stuck saying poor me, and yeah, like that's the part that locks you in, and you just have to literally say like, get over it. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's just like, stop whinging. And like, I got so exhausted of feeling, and I wasn't that bad, like I wasn't, but I just literally got so exhausted by even having that thought of like, oh, my life, why? It's like, and I always just say, why me? And you need to get over that.
That's everyone in pain always says, why me, right?
Eventually you realize like you're not special, and having a healthy body is not promised, and it's a privilege to be here, and it's a blessing to be able to use this body. So you're not owed health. You have to earn it. And this is all these kids coming in now. As the crazy thing is, our parents and the generations before them, they've broken down this body. They were free to enjoy it. Now, the kids coming out, these millennials, have to earn their body. We have to literally earn health. We have to do the work. And like, as crazy as that sounds, it makes us grateful to have the body, because we've never, in generations before, we've never known what it's like to lose health.
Right.
And until you lose something, you pretty much can't be grateful for it, because you don't know what the lack of that really feels like.
Yeah, and gratefulness is something that I always feel like in sickness, it isn't there.
Yeah.
And in wellness, it's always there. It's interesting when you see people heal, especially with chronic long-term, especially pain, but even long-term or cancer or things that have been like take you down to the dark where you think you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
In the end, when people have healed, they always have a certain amount of new awareness of gratefulness and compassion. Those are the two areas.
Pain just rips you to pieces and opens you up.
Yeah.
And that's why when you let go of the victim mentality and the identification, the pain that you went through is what ends up freeing you. Freeing not only the physical
100%.
parts of you. Now you can live your life again, you can run again, so you're free from being bedridden, which I was pretty much bedridden in my later days, which I'll go into. But it frees the soul, it frees the mind. It restructures the mind, which is the mind is what traps us. So if you can release that programming in the mind, then the soul can be free. The mind is literally like the rooftop that when you bust that open, the rest of who we are, the love, the light, whatever is within us that you want to refer to it as, that can then just encompass everything.
So cool. So tell us the rest of your story, and then we'll
cap it up.
We'll cap it up.
All right. Well, so I said how 3 months in I noticed the wrist, the elbow, and it just little thing after another. And then when I realized maybe 6 to 9 months in, or maybe even more, and honestly, it was nearly around a year before I could pinpoint it. And I'd had feelings in the past that it was that, but then we're looking at fear, and I don't want to stop taking this drug because it seems to help my skin. So I'm like literally so self-conscious about small acne and stuff that I'm willing to potentially risk the breakdown of my body just to fix like an appearance thing.
Right.
I'm not even like
It's the way conditioned.
Yeah.
Literally. So eventually when I completely accepted that it could be this medication, then I realized it was. By that point, the only reason I did finally surrender to that idea was because eventually, instead of just being an elbow or wrist, it was my whole body. It turned to rock because of this medication. And my whole leg would literally freeze, and like that's dehydration. That's as plain and simple as it gets.
Acids
I was
equal
cramping
dehydration.
up, my ankle, just everything was as hard as a rock. And I was getting my mentor that I mentioned earlier. Just by chance, he happens to be very sensitive to energies, very good with his hands, very intuitive as a person since a young age. Like Billy, how I said, we're all very spiritually aware, and we've been open to that by grace of how our path has unfolded. And luckily I attracted these people that were there helping me, and he would be so good at massage that even just walking in the room, he could feel where my pain was. And he would be able to identify different areas that are really bad on different days. And it was mostly my nervous system towards the end, but at first it was dehydration in the muscles and everything like that. And he would be able to put his hands directly on the worst points, and he would sometimes massage me 2.5, 3 hours a night, 5 to 7 days a week. It was almost literally like, okay, the sun's going down, I get a massage. And that was like that for nearly a year straight.
Wow.
Just so I could wake up the next day and push
Function almost.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's how it got towards the end. And the same with chemotherapy, which this medication is like literally microdosing chemotherapy, because on an acid to pH scale, it's the same pretty much chemical compound as chemo.
Wow.
And I was microdosing that. And the same with chemo is when you stop taking it, there's a blowback. And when I finally realized it was that, and realized, okay, I'm not playing this game anymore, it hit harder. So it got even worse, and we kept going down the track of I was doing physiotherapy, getting a lot of dry needling and stuff, and my physio would always say it's neural, it's the nerves, it's not so much your muscles. There was dehydration in the muscle that was causing an issue, but it was the nervous system tripping up the body.
Yeah, and so many of these drugs mess up the nervous system, and adrenals are so weak, and they're so responsible for our nervous system. So,
and that's what's good about this path and this information that we're learning is if you follow the same principles, you don't have to worry necessarily where it's coming from, what's causing it. Because the way you heal the body is always the same.
Nature will heal you.
So literally, and this is why I've stopped really checking for filtration and all these different things, is because like knowing how much I'm filtering isn't going to change it. And I know my body's always doing its best for me, and I'm always grateful for what my body's willing to do. So I've let go of a lot of different things that can at first be exciting to monitor for sure, and you see yourself getting better, but then you just let go and you start to live your life, because you can get so ingrained and consumed in the role of detox that it kind of just restructures who we are, and it just makes us always constantly coming from the mind. We're always thinking and
You get to enjoy life.
worrying about the next
well,
step.
and I think that is the next step, because I think early on why filtration and checking your filtration is important,
Of
because
course.
it may make some people decide they're going to do a kidney glandular, or in my case I use sometimes kidney sarcodes, which is like to help balance a kidney, or a special kidney remedy. So if I saw someone was really working hard at the diet and they were really not filtering after some time, I would want to do something to help aid the kidney, maybe up the kidney herbs. So in the beginning, it's a natural thing, because you want to see that reward, and you want to also measure, like if you're not getting the acids out, you might have to cut down on your lymphatic herbs, because then you're stirring up a lot of crap for people.
Time and a place for everything.
Right? So you're at this place now where it's so cool but now it is, you get in a routine where filtration, which I'm still in, but now you get to a place where you feel the benefits, and you're 50, 60, 70% better. In your case now, much better than that. But let's say even at a 50, 60, okay, so now you have to get in the habit,
back a bit,
step back, and like you're saying.
And that can open up more time and energy for the body to go, all right, let's do this.
Yeah, cool.
Because I got consumed in it,
but you needed to be in the beginning.
You have to learn that side. This is
Right.
why we suffer our own ignorance to bring light and awareness to what we do.
Yeah.
And when we like literally just step back and not care, it's funny, but in those moments we can achieve more.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I want to end it by each of you saying, like, just some words of wisdom to the people out there. They may be suffering, they may be not suffering, but what advice would you leave them with?
Personally, I would just encourage anyone to be grateful for where they're at and who they are, but aware that they're the one that has to decide if they want to expand. Because on some level, the universe, creation, our life process, the day-to-day things that we come into contact with just by living, they can help expand and bring us to a place of growth or whatever. But just setting the intention within yourself to say, I'm willing to be a better person, become more, learn, and be used to help others. Just setting that intention can give you the energy and the strength to go on. But if you're coming from a very selfish place and you're not opened up to be more than just motivated by your own primitive needs, then, try it for yourself, but you'll notice that the universe and the energy and whatever empowers you is going to be much less if it's all about me. But if you just forget about yourself for a bit, and despite your pain, despite your fibromyalgia, whatever it is you think you're going through, still try and do things for others and be selfless and not come from that place of I'm in pain or I'm suffering and poor me. And you just try and be a good person despite maybe feeling like your life has been robbed or your freedom has been taken. Just be selfless for a bit, and that can take you to the next level.
Well, that's such great advice, because really, like they say, the more you give, the more you get back. So
it just gives you that strength to go on. And sometimes you think, I can't do this for someone else. I have to preserve my energy because I'm sick and I have so much, you know what I mean? I have so much that I need to do
and then
for
it's all
myself.
about you.
But sometimes just, going within and maybe being selfish for a while, then you have the strength to go out and help others. But then you realize that the helping and extending the hand gives you the strength to go on. And it's that exchange. So in the moment, yes, it might be exhausting to pretend, and literally you might have to pretend to care and just play the role of giving a damn when your heart doesn't feel it. but you still expended that energy in that moment, and the universe will give it back tenfold.
That's
And
cool,
this is what I've
Daniel.
learned more and more and more is
Sure.
that, and devoting yourself to others is what's going to ultimately heal you. So just step outside of that prison, that self-imprisonment, and that's going to free you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic advice.
Sure.
And BillyMaree, you got to top that one now.
Whoops.
Mine's quite simple. I'd say you have to be gentle with yourself,
Yeah.
first and foremost. And you have to be willing to be mindful of yourself and the way you react to certain situations, especially walking this path. Even as someone, not like me, the person who is suffering, a lot of things trigger them. Many things that are surrounding them trigger them. Obviously, they're not able to enjoy things that, quote unquote, normal people would enjoy.
Right.
So you really have to take time for yourself and be gentle with yourself. Spend some alone time getting to know those deeper parts that can become suppressed when you're surrounded by people or just noises, distractions, because it does come down to that. Apart from the actual physical suffering, getting back to the emotional stuff as well. People tend to turn a blind eye to that, and they're not really like, they can identify that it's there, but they're not looking deeply enough to see, okay, where does it begin?
And,
What's the starting point? Because if you can pinpoint that, and then you can start to take those slow steps to slowly unwind and unfold it to the point where it's like, okay, I've spent my time dealing with this emotional issue, and now the physical healing becomes so much easier.
It's like in detox where you have to unwind, and it's the same with the emotional stuff. You have to.
Yeah.
It becomes more and more of like a focal point, and you're being able to see it more, and then you step back through it, and then it dissipates, and
You know, and this is why I'm so excited to add what all this detox and regeneration and iridology to my homeopathic knowledge, because homeopathy is such an amazing tool
Yeah.
to take people through the emotional part, because you know, it's been around since the 1700s, and it's always about going to the emotional cause.
Well, that's
sometimes people aren't aware what the emotional cause is,
Yeah.
but through a 2 or 3 hour conversation, and I'm asking lots of questions, I can find often what their triggers were or their griefs were. Everybody has
It's an aspect that a lot of people just turn a blind eye to.
or they feel like you said, they don't know where to begin.
Exactly.
Right? It's
There's
overwhelming.
so much to
There's-
it. That's the thing.
that's
We could
the
sit
thing.
here and talk for hours and hours and hours, and I didn't even
Yeah.
get to touch on that I barely even got to speak on how I'm healed now, but the fact that the emotional aspect to my pain and suffering was probably more than the physical.
His
At
heart
least-
has opened so much these past few months. It's
Wow.
amazing.
Like that aspect of healing has, like, and that's the crazy part, is we feel like, oh, it takes so long to heal the physical body, and whoever's going through something that seems like they're not moving anywhere, generally you're doing the work on the physical body, you're taking the herbs, the diet, everything. I'm doing everything perfect. Why is nothing changing? When you shift an emotional blockage, it is literally bang, and the body changes. And this is what I was going to go into earlier, is I went through certain things, and my life process opened me up to take certain choices and be in certain environments, and that is what healed me on an emotional level. I just let my intuition guide me. I took certain steps. Certain things took place where it came up and out of me, and within a matter of 10 minutes I was already healed from it, but I'm regenerating more and more each day. And over the last 3 to 4 weeks, this has been happening ridiculously, is certain things will bring about an emotional release in me, whether that's because I'm crying and things are coming up, or I had a good day, or whatever it is, and I feel certain things and that's coming up. That is releasing stagnant, blocked energy within the energy body. And as soon as that movement occurs for the first time in either that lifetime or a few years, the physical body will respond by
Quickly.
healing within a matter of minutes.
That's
And you
cool.
can literally go from like having chronic pain in your head and neck, or I have a friend who's got a lot of head pressure, and I've told him, and he even believes this too. And it's an energetic thing.
Yeah.
And it comes down to just waiting it out, being patient, and seeing how life can help heal you.
At the same time, I feel like you have to be open and willing to be destroyed in order to be rebuilt.
Yeah, you have to be passionate
you
about
have
life
to be
doing
open
this.
to that.
Yeah, and fear holds a lot of people.
Yeah, you need to
their
understand
place.
that it's part of the process, because often, more times than not, when people are experiencing this thing, again, the victim role, they say, why me, why me, why me?
Right.
Without understanding that these are the things you need to go through to get to the place of, oh, now I know why that happened, and I'm starting to heal. People don't realize that the physical and the emotional are so intertwined.
Yeah, they really don't.
And I feel like, I mean, for anyone who may be about to partake in this journey, I feel like it's of great benefit to pay close attention to the emotional body before leaping into trying or attempting to heal the physical. Because if you can pinpoint those triggers or past traumas or whatever things that you're holding on to, if you can identify those before going really deep into the physical detox, it's going to be a lot more free-flowing for yourself, instead of, getting them.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, however they get there, eventually they'll get there, because healing is healing, and nature's law is nature's law, and we may not feel like we're ready, or we may not want this symptom to go last, or we want this first, but in the end, nature takes you all the way to the end, and if you walk the path, you get there.
You have to be excited to let life destroy you so that you can become who you really are.
Have to be open to that.
Through destruction comes rebirth. Rebirth and regeneration. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I'm so in awe of how much wisdom and knowledge you guys have at your young age, and I'm so happy you're spreading it out into the world, because we all have to be the light workers to get the message out and to help people. Sure. Our planet's sick, our people are sick. Yeah, who if not us? Someone else. So we need to be the messengers. But
can't outrun your path. You got to be who you were put here to be, whether you like it or not.
That's so true. And once you know you're doing your work in life, your life path or your life work, it feels good.
It does.
Then you accept it more and you quit fighting it.
Just wake up and execute.
Yep. I say wake up.
And just wake up.
And eat more fruit.
Yeah, wake up, then wake up.
No resistance.
All right, you guys, thanks.
Goodbye.
Wow, what a powerful story. And I love the happy ending of not only Daniel getting well, but who he has become. He's so aware and conscious and able now to live with compassion and gratitude, which always seems to me like a component to getting well for sure. Also, to hear BillyMaree's journey as his girlfriend and caretaker, and how she got lost also in his illness, is heartbreaking but inspiring, because to hear that they learned all about this inspires me. I too have learned this, because when a family member has an illness, it's so difficult not to take on their pain and trying to help them just because you love them so much. But in the end, it's devastating for the relationship, and it can take your life away, which then only puts you too in a trap. And that's why I was so happy to have BillyMaree with us for the interview, because you guys got to hear the story from both sides. How awesome to be 23 and have the truth in your hands already. Gosh, I had to work so hard to get where I'm at. In our youth, we had no internet, no social media. There was no way to get fast-tracked into knowledge like you can today. But the trick today, and the scary part, is that at least 60% of what you hear or read out there is not the truth. But Daniel found the two superstars, John Rose and Dr. Morse. That was his destiny, and thank God for that. Now he'll be living, giving the truth back to anyone that is open to hear it. All right, you guys, it was a long one today, so I'm going to sign off and let you go. I hope you enjoyed the interview today. I hope you could take a few things from it to improve your life. I also hope you can see the power of fruit and the importance of digging into our emotions if we want to get to Wellville or thrive here in our lives on planet Earth. I hope you enjoyed the show today, my podcast family. I know that you know what time it is, right? It's time to say goodbye. So, ta-ta for now. May this year be one filled with more fruit, more willingness to be open to raise your level of health no matter where you are right now. So try a juice feast this year, eat more fruit, and raise your level of biophotons and watch what happens. Vidal has spoken. Remember, you heal with a high fruit, plant-powered diet, homeopathy, and detoxing, of course. Peace, be healthy, be free, live life.